Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the art in the 18th century. The 18th century, it was a time of great change in Europe and beyond. The century began with absolute monarchies ruling the major countries. But by the end of it, those monarchies faced upheaval. Two major revolutions changed the world during this time: the American Revolution between 1775 and 1783, and the French Revolution between 1789 and 1799. In addition to political revolutions, we also saw the start of the Industrial Revolution, which transformed how people worked and lived. The ideas of the Enlightenment, a movement that stressed reason, science, and human rights, were also changing how people thought about their governments, their societies, and themselves. This restlessness in society was also seen in the art of the time, with two very different styles emerging: the Rococo and Neoclassicism. These two movements expressed two opposite sensibilities that reflected the tension and change of the century. The Rococo style of art, architecture, and decoration too, originated in France and represents the final phase of the Baroque period. Rococo is lighter and more delicate than Baroque, with more linear and graceful ornaments. It avoids the strong contrasts and dramatic effects typical of the earlier Baroque art. Rococo flourished in the mid-18th century, and it is often classified as late Baroque. The style became popular after the death of King Louis XIV of France in 1715 and lasted until the start of the French Revolution in 1789. During this time, Rococo became the dominant style, especially in France, but it also spread to other countries. The Rococo style was often used in aristocratic interiors, such as in the salons of Paris, where the nobility gathered for conversation, entertainment, and intellectual discussions. In Italy, the final period of Baroque art was referred to as Barocchetto. On the other hand, we have the rise of Neoclassicism. Neoclassicism took its name from a renewed interest in the arts of the classical world, especially the art of ancient Greece and Rome. Neoclassical artists believed that the ancients had achieved a kind of perfection in their art, with harmonic proportions, balance, and calm composure. This interest in classical art increased in the 18th century due to important archaeological discoveries such as the ruins of the Greek temples of Paestum, the ruins of the Hadrian's Villa in Tivoli, and the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. One of the leading scholars of the time, Johann Winckelmann, developed the idea of noble simplicity and calm grandeur, which became a hallmark of neoclassical art. Neoclassical artists wanted their work to reflect these ideals, with rational and balanced designs that were free from the emotional intensity of Baroque art. They emphasized geometrical perfection and great attention to detail. Neoclassical art often used themes from history and mythology, presenting examples of virtues, heroism, and morality. Art, in this sense, was not just beautiful, it also had an educational function. Two of the most famous neoclassical artists were the sculptor Antonio Canova and the painter Jacques-Louis David. Antonio Canova was one of the most famous sculptors of neoclassical movement. He was born in Possagno, near Treviso, in 1757, and his early life was full of challenges. His father passed away when he was young, and when his mother remarried and moved away, he was raised by his grandfather Pasino, a skilled stonesman. It was his grandfather who taught Canova the basics of sculpture. From an early age, Canova showed great skill in working with marble and other materials. According to legend, when he was about 10 years old, he impressed a group of Venetian nobles by sculpting a majestic lion out of butter at a dinner party. This caught the attention of a powerful patron, who helped Canova receive formal training in the best workshops in Venice. In 1779, Canova traveled to Rome, where he studied the sculptures of ancient Greece and Rome. During his time in Rome, he became heavily influenced by neoclassical ideals, which would shape his work for the rest of his career. Canova's sculptures were known for their calm grandeur and meticulous attention to detail. Throughout his life, Canova worked for many important patrons, including European royals and popes. Some of his most famous works include the funerary monuments for Pope Clement XIII and Clement XIV in Rome, the monument of Maria Cristina of Austria in Vienna, and the statue of Vittorio Alfieri in Florence. One of Canova's most famous sculptures is his portrait of Napoleon's sister, Paulina Bonaparte, who he depicted as Venus, the goddess of love, holding the apple of victory. This sculpture, made of white marble, is known for its graceful beauty and careful attention to details. Canova's fame grew to the point where Pope Pius VII made him General Inspector of Antiquities and Arts, a prestigious position where he helped to protect ancient works of art. He also played an important role in recovering many pieces of art that had been stolen by Napoleon during his conquest. Canova died in 1822, leaving behind a legacy as one of the greatest sculptors of his time. His body is buried now in his hometown in Possagno, in a neoclassical temple that he designed himself. But how did Canova realize these marble masterpieces? His process for creating his marble sculptures was highly detailed. He began by making a drawing of the sculpture he wanted to create. Then he produced small sketches in clay to develop his ideas further. After this, he created a reduced-size plaster model of the sculpture. Once he was satisfied with a small model, Canova moved on to make a life-size glaze model, which he used to shape the final plaster mold. The life-size clay model would be destroyed during the creation of the plaster mold, which was then used to create the final full-size plaster model. This plaster model would be used to make the marble sculpture then. Sometimes Canova made multiple plaster models from a single mold. Finally, the marble sculpture would be carved based on the full-size plaster model. Canova's attention to detail at every step of this process allowed him to create incredibly lifelike and graceful sculptures. His work were admired throughout Europe for their beauty and technical mastery. There are also some interesting stories about Canova and his works. For example, one of his most famous sculptures, Napoleon as Mars the Peacemaker, caused quite a stir. Napoleon, who commissioned the work, was not happy when he saw himself completely nude as a statue. Canova defended his artistic choice, saying that the nudity was inspired by ancient Greek athletes, but Napoleon still found it a little bit excessive. After Napoleon's defeat in the Battle of Waterloo, the British commander Lord Wellington took the statue as a trophy, and it is now displayed in his own home. Another fascinating detail about Canova is how his body was handled after his death. While most of his body is buried in Possagno in a temple he designed himself, his heart was buried separately in Venice, and his right hand, once kept in the Accademia di Belle Arti in Venice, is now also in Possagno. His legacy lives on not just in his sculptures, but in these unique resting places. So, to wrap up, the 18th century was a period of great change, reflected in the contrasting artistic styles of Rococo and Neoclassicism. Rococo, with its lightness and grace, represented the elegance of the aristocracy, while Neoclassicism, with its return to ancient ideals, represented reason, order, and morality. Antonio Canova was one of the greatest artists of this time, embodying the neoclassical ideas of harmony, balance, and calm grandeur. His works continue to be admired for their technical precision and classical beauty. So, this was it. Why do you think neoclassical artists like Canova were so interested in ancient Greece and Rome? Are there some works of art which you particularly appreciated or that you know and enjoy? So, have fun with art and see you at next class. Bye bye.